People can enter the training with kind of an intimidation factor, like, oh, this is a military jet. How can I fly this thing? What was your experience?
I was overwhelmed. On this episode of Between Two Wings, we're joined by Chris from Victory Aviation, a unique flight school based out of Denton, Texas that provides training in Marchetti S-211s.
The stuff you learn in the cockpit, you can apply everywhere.
We dive into what makes their training successful, what it's like to fly a jet, and how they can take a fresh PPL who's just had time in a Cessna 172 and show them the world of jet flying. What's the biggest learning curve?
It's the intimidation and the sensory overload.
As you can see, this is our first on-site recording of Between Two Wings, so you may just hear some aircraft background noise. But with that being said, let's go talk to Chris. 3, 2, 1. Welcome to the show. We're so happy to have you here, Chris, at Sun and Fun 2025. We're excited that you could join us on this beautiful morning. I would love to hear a little bit about what Victory Aviation is doing this year at the show. What do you have going on this week?
We are here creating uncommon value for aviators of all backgrounds, like we always do. We trained a pilot on the way here from Texas. We're doing training here at the show. We'll be training a pilot after the show. So that's just what we do. That's why we created Victory Flight Training, is to give the opportunity for pilots of any background to fly an advanced aircraft like the S-211.
That's awesome. And this isn't your first Sun and Fun here with Victory.
It's not. I think the first year was probably 2019 with our second airplane we showed up here, and we've been coming every year since.
For listeners that aren't as familiar with what you all do, can you give us a little bit of an elevator pitch? I mean, where you're out of, how you got started doing this?
Certainly, yeah. We started Victory with the vision of helping our clients, our pilot clients, make every day a victory in their flying, work, family, and life. Because as most pilots should know, the stuff you learn in the cockpit, you can apply everywhere. If it's the stick and rudder skills, the airmanship, the judgment, decision-making, risk management, briefing and debriefing, all these things can be applied anywhere. So not just you're flying in any kind of aircraft, but your job, your relationships, my marriage. I apply these things with my kids. You know, stuff you do as a pilot, you can apply anywhere. And so the advanced skills you learned in the S-211 with Victory Flight Training can create greater value throughout your life.
Yeah, I love that. The values are really applicable in any aspect of life. So where are you guys based out of?
Denton, Texas, just on the northwest corner of DFW, Metroplex.
Yeah. And the kind of training you offer, can you talk a little bit about how you get started with Victory and where you could possibly end up?
Certainly. This is the first jet we got. It has a steam gauge, military, kind of 1970s vintage cockpit, but it was perfect. It is perfect for a pilot coming in from any kind of an aircraft and getting kind of sensory overload, but learning how to adjust and adapt and get familiarized in an advanced aircraft. So the foundation of our training is familiarization, initial flight training in the jet. And some pilots take the course of taking that all the way to a pilot in command rating. It's a type rating, but for experimental aircraft, it's an experimental aircraft authorization. And so you fly with the DPE and you can get the S-211 on your license. So that's the foundation of the training. Because we have multiple airplanes, because of our background, we can also fly formation training. And then upset prevention and recovery training is a huge thing because of that being a danger throughout all different kinds of cockpits. And so we do UPRT as well. So the FAA authorization we have allows familiarization and introduction training, formation training, and UPRT.
I mean, I got to fly it yesterday. It was actually the coolest thing I've ever done in my entire life.
Good.
It was a major thrill. And I was shocked at how similar it was to small aircraft that I've flown previously. I didn't think it would feel that familiar, but with the hydraulic system and all of that, it really was easier than I expected. And so I assume that that's how you get students comfortable, and that's how you chose this aircraft. You thought that it would translate well to people who didn't have prior experience in something this advanced, because this does kind of take the edge off of that intimidation.
Exactly right. And you got to experience our strategy. I mentioned our vision, making every day a victory. Our strategy to get there is to have the best people, the best training, and the best hardware. So you flew with Jake Patrick, one of our best instructors, and the best training, the best ideas we can bring forward, and then the best hardware. And like you said, the S-211, people can enter the training with kind of an intimidation factor, like, oh, this is a military jet. How can I fly this thing? But it does fly like a general aviation airplane. Its stall speed with full flaps and kind of mid-range on the gas is mid to low 80s. And so it's not that much faster than a Cirrus or a Bonanza. And it lands Very simply, it's got very benign stall characteristics. It's something that people can step into. I've had a 41-hour Cessna or Cirrus pilot land it from the back seat on the first flight, which is not totally normal, and not everybody can do that, but it's a very simple, fun airplane to fly. So it's perfect for what it was designed for, which is pilot training.
Right. I did feel like it related a lot to general aviation aircraft. Not so much the size, it was a lot smaller than I anticipated.
Yeah.
And Jake joked, he said, it's an Italian aircraft. Italians,
That's right.
They're a little smaller than us Americans. So I was a little squeezed, but other than that, it was a dream. So it was awesome.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
What did you feel as far as the intimidation factor I talked about, or the sensory overload, so much going on, and all the steam gauges, especially ForeFlight, Garmin, all the different assets we have out there now? What was your experience?
I was overwhelmed. I was nervous. I think that the biggest factor is, like you said, there are so many things to pay attention to. And in any aircraft, you are going to feel like that.
Yeah.
But in this one specifically, we're going a lot faster than what I'm used to in a Cessna 150. So I think everything moves a little faster. And you just have to be on the edge of your seat prepared for anything to happen. And I mean, coming into Sun and Fun with the traffic, we had to hold for traffic, and just making sure that you're attending to all of those certain aspects to really stay on top of your game was intimidating. But other than that, the actual performance of the aircraft felt very comfortable and natural,
Good.
which was shocking to me, like I said. But overall, it was a great experience. So I'm really thrilled that I got to do it. So.
Yeah, that's kind of our standard reaction. People come into it and they're in awe of the opportunity to fly in a military jet trainer. So we typically, we have a very complete and coherent briefing that's conducted. It could be a couple hours, and a cockpit briefing, cockpit safety briefing, cockpit orientation with all the safety and emergency and egress type capabilities. Once you go through that, but people are still pretty amped up when you first get to fly. The first takeoff, the first maneuvers, the first landing, all that kind of stuff. But then as you start being able to improve your scan, develop your scan, and the one thing that I had mentioned before with ForeFlight, kind of being that we have ForeFlight on a mini iPad in the cockpit in a couple different ways. We can have it presented right in the front on a RAM ball mount, kind of like a head-up display almost in a military aircraft, or we can have it on, like I showed you earlier, on the iPad on an e-board.
Right.
So there's a couple different ways to utilize ForeFlight, but what it does for a general aviation pilot is give that level of familiarity. It's something they can fall back on. They can be looking around and going, all these gauges and this jet's going, I'm pulling G's, but they can look down at their ForeFlight and it's like their blankie, it's their whoopee. They can go, oh, I've still got my ForeFlight here.
Right.
I can see where I am. I know what's going on.
Right.
And so it's been a tremendous asset. And I mentioned this was our first airplane with the steam gauges and everything. Right off the bat, we were using ForeFlight mounted on the front. And it's got TACAN and VOR. So we're back in the 1950s and 60s as far as navigation around the U.S. So using that as our primary navigation, FAA I know is listening. We use that as a primary navigation and use the ForeFlight as improving situational awareness. But it's been a tremendous asset, not just for our high-time pilots and instructors, but for every general aviation pilot that comes through.
Yeah, well, we're happy to hear that. We used it yesterday. We hooked it up, got some ADS-B in so that we had more situational awareness. But you're right, it did feel like a familiar friend with me there in a very stressful environment. So I totally get that. Let's circle back. I want to hear about how Victory started. Can you give me a little background about the beginnings of Victory Aviation and really what inspired you all to start this very niche training environment?
Sure. Yeah, my partner's Tom Paquin. He was also a Marine F-18 pilot, and when he left active duty, he started a couple of companies from scratch, literally in his garage. Did very well, sold one and then two of those, called me up, wanted to get back into aviation, wanted to leverage our business experience, because I also had a couple of startup experiences, and then add that to our military experience as officers and pilots and instructors and F-18s. And so initially we got a North American T6, a World War II T6, which was amazing. And then Tom bought the first S-211, this one, in 2017. The examiner, who had a military background, Navy background, he said, hey, with what you guys have done, you ought to get another airplane and set up an FAA training program. So that's what we did. So by 2018, we had the FAA approved training program, got the second airplane the next year, started going to Oshkosh. 2018 was our first Oshkosh year, and it's been growing ever since.
That's awesome. So Chris, I want to talk a little bit about your background, your career in aviation. Obviously, you have a wide variety of pilots on the staff and some really great instructors with huge accolades, but can you tell me a little bit about your background in flying?
Sure. I learned how to fly in Montana in a Super Cub, sold a Super Cub at a little short strip, uncontrolled strip. Then I went to the Air Force Academy, and within a couple of years, I think the second year there, I became a sailplane instructor. So now I was a kid soloing other kids in sailplanes, which it amazes me that they let us do that at that time. So I did that, like 500 flights in sailplanes as an instructor. And then after a couple of years at the Air Force Academy, I decided I wanted to leave the paramilitary and join the real military. So I went into the Marine Corps.
The loyalty switch.
Yeah, that's right. Went into the Marine Corps, flew single-seat Hornets off carriers with the Marine Corps Squadron, and then became an instructor in Hornets. And then fast forward to when Tom and I set up Victory Flight Training. I trained a couple folks in the T6, and then we got these. And so the background has been aviation, high-performance aviation, instruction. Tom's background is similar with the Marine Corps and F-18s and business. And so we've rolled just different aspects of value creation in the air and on the ground, from business, from leadership as officers in the Marines, at leadership in businesses, and then aviation, of course, to try to create a program that is unique in that we're not just focused on flying skills or one aspect of flying skills. It's a spectrum with that checkout training or initial training, formation training, and UPRT, and also just I really want people to come fly with us that understand that the things they do in the cockpit, they can apply everywhere through life. That's just important, and a lot of people don't think about that.
So the S-211 has a pretty unconventional cockpit. We've discussed it's pretty small.
Yeah,
it's a little narrow. How did you land on the configuration of, using the ADS-B device, using the iPad? You had to do a lot of workarounds. I mean, it changes from, aircraft to aircraft. How did you figure that out?
Desperation, really. I mean, trying to navigate in the National Airspace System, especially in the DFW area, or around here, and having the tools of ADS-B and the traffic, and the map, the traffic, the weather, the approach plates with ForeFlight, all the things that brings into the cockpit. When people were flying this thing initially, it was built in 1987, and the technology was like 1970s-ish. It was vortex. It was, looking out. It was, maybe you had a squawk and you're getting calls from controllers. But leaping into the 21st century, ForeFlight and the Sentry or Stratus were the first tools that enabled us to bring the S-211 into the 21st century. Now, our other jet has been Garminized with a GTN 750, an autopilot, a G3X, which is great. I still carry this every single flight, and I usually have a Stratus or a Sentry to back me up too. They've never failed, the Garmin, but I like to have backups.
Yeah.
So it made a lot of sense to do that transition. And just with the location, the cockpit, like you saw, it's a military aircraft, so pretty much all the real estate is taken up with a switch or a gauge. Having the Garmin, or if you look at an F-35 cockpit where there's glass, everything is kind of condensed in the glass. But with this one, there's stuff everywhere. And your line of sight is super important. We didn't want to put it up like on a canopy mount where it would block or obscure the ground or traffic or that kind of thing. So the best place we found to put it was right where the gun sight would normally go. So I mounted a ram ball on the gun sight mount and put the mini iPad right there, so it doesn't occlude anything. It's below your field of view out of the cockpit, and then we just put the Stratus or the Sentry back in the rear cockpit. Yeah. So it was the one way to do it that didn't cause any other problems.
Right. I mean, even when I was sitting back there, I felt like I had great visual above and around me, but again, like you said, there wasn't a lot of real estate. If I had mounted something in the window or the canopy, I would have been restricted.
Yeah, and that could be that without that Cessna 172 comes buzzing up and causes a near-midair situation.
Right. So can you walk us through what a typical flight looks like at Victory? Let's say you're a regular student, someone who has their PPL, but is looking to advance and get checked out in something like this. From pre-flight to in-flight operations, what do they go through? I mean, I got to experience a little bit of it, but obviously not to the extreme detail that you all host on site. Yeah,
that's a great question. We have a standardized FAA training program that we had to get approved by the FAA, but of course we customize it because it could be that 40.2 hour brand new PPL coming out to fly with us. It could be a 10,000 hour military pilot. It could be a 30,000 hour retired airline pilot. So we have to customize the training somewhere, and they could be doing UPRT only, or they could be doing formation, or they could be doing the checkout. So we customize to exactly what the client wants to fly and needs to fly. And so if it's a mid-time general aviation pilot, we'll bring them out and probably spend a little extra time on the safety and the egress. If it's somebody that's got military experience, we're not going to need to spend as much on the high performance aspects of the airplane. But the baseline program remains identical. You'll show up, we'll get you set up with a helmet and a flight suit if you want to wear those. It's up to the aviator.
I didn't wear a flight suit.
Yeah, up to the aviator. It's pretty darn hot here. It gets hot in Texas too. But we have all those safety items, so you can wear a helmet, flight suit, or you can wear headsets. Get you set up. We'll do a briefing, standardized briefing right out of a military briefing checklist, go through risk management, and then it's to the airplane, pre-flight, rear cockpit, safety briefing in the rear cockpit. And then for an initial flight, it's a demo do type format, whether it's a short flight or a full checkout type flight. The instructor will do the first takeoff, but then once the jet is cleaned up and trimmed up, we hand it off to you guys. You guys get to fly right away. If we're in Denton, we'll get outside under the Bravo. If we're at Lakeland like this, we'll get clear a little ways and then find a patch of clear airspace to do some maneuvers. We got a great area in DFW where we've talked to the TRACON controllers at DFW about a chunk of airspace north of Denton away from the Bravo. So we'll go out there. You'll be flying the airplane until we get to the area. We'll just talk you through some maneuvers, some basic turns, which you want to do in any airplane. You take the controls in any airplane, controls, a yoke or a stick, just gently maneuver the airplane so you get a feel for the controls and the responsiveness. And then the instructor will go back and forth with you. You'll fly a slow flight into a stall series, into aerobatics, into potentially upset prevention type scenarios. And that can be 10, 20, 30 minutes. And then we'll drop into the landing pattern. We'll demonstrate an overhead military brake approach. Demonstrate one of those, demonstrate a touch and go, and then after it's back established on the downwind, hand the airplane off to you. First flight, you'll get the chance to land the aircraft. And so we'll do that several times. If you do a standardized kind of 1 hour format, 1 hour in the jet, usually 45 minutes or so airborne, you get the chance to do the airborne maneuvers, landing pattern, and a full stop.
That's amazing. It's amazing that you could go from a Cessna 172 and then have that experience. I mean, it's incredible. And so few people get the opportunity to,
right.
So it really is special.
Yeah, we have not had one unhappy aviator. Guaranteed. Everybody's got a smile on their face when they come back.
Well, and I was going to ask you, have you ever had someone come in and just not feel comfortable where they said, you know what? I don't think this is for me, because it is intimidating and it isn't for everybody. I mean, I felt that feeling yesterday of where my stomach drops when you're doing those maneuvers, and I could tell that that's probably not something I might want to continue doing. So, well,
that is a great question, and in full transparency, we have had a few people that come in and come down and they're smiling and they're kind of just discombobulated, and they go, I am so glad I did that, but I don't need to do that again.
Yeah,
and so
buckle
they're
inside
happy.
them and they're done.
Yeah, they're happy with the plus or minus 30 degrees angle of bank and 1.3 G's in a turn and that kind of thing, and that's fine. They've got the experience. They've benefited from the uncommon value of unmatched aviation training in a phenomenal airplane. And if that's the check in the block that they want, then we've accomplished our vision for them. Right.
And they gained enough in that 45-minute lesson to take with them for quite a while.
Guaranteed.
And stories to tell.
Once in a lifetime experience. They got the Top Gun experience, so they got the military jet experience, and they can tell that story for the rest of their lives.
For low-time pilots, stepping from something like a Cessna, like we were discussing, what's the biggest learning curve? We discussed that overstimulation, there's so many aspects going on, but from your experience doing this for quite a while, what's the biggest hurdle for them?
That's exactly it. It's the intimidation and the sensory overload, which is why we start pilots in the back seat so they can just kind of take a breath, relax. The first flight, typically, I'll tell them, I'm going to be talking the entire time, and you can follow me on the checklist on the ground for the ground procedures and that kind of thing. But after that, I want you flying the jet, and I want you looking out and enjoying the flight, because that's where, if you're looking out here, I don't want somebody looking down here, and a lot of people, especially with the 21st century G1000 Cessnas everywhere, they're just looking there, and that's where they're getting their comfort, but your eyeballs have to be out. And so I want people looking out, enjoying the ride, improving their scan, starting to get the instrument panel in their scan. And typically, it's 3 or 4 flights in the rear cockpit, and then we transition to the front cockpit. Then we do them. We give them a cockpit. We sit them in the front cockpit, give them a location of items, kind of a cockpit quiz, and then there's some functionality that's in the front cockpit that's not in the rear cockpit. Emergency fuel shutoff, emergency gear extension, some of those things. So we talk them through switch locations, procedures, emergency procedures, because there's things that if something happens, we take a bird down the intake, they're going to have to do things that we can't do in the back. So that's usually 3, 4, 5 flights in the back seat, and then we'll get them in the front. And it's really an exponential learning curve for most pilots in the back seat. And then once they get in the front, they're feeling more confident. It's a unique experience to fly a military jet in the rear seat, but once you get in the front seat, now you're not looking at the helmet of the instructor in the front. That's where they just kind of go, oh, it's like they are the pilot flying this aircraft.
Yeah, and that's such a great feeling.
Yeah.
What kind of advice would you give other pilots maybe thinking about making the jump to this type of jet training?
I'd say don't think of it as a jump. Think of it as a step. One small step, a Neil Armstrong kind of a mindset. It really is, it is achievable. Anybody, any rated aviator can jump into this airplane and have a phenomenal experience. So it's, again, we go back to that intimidation thing. This is attainable, it's doable. A brand new pilot, PPL, can hop into this, or a retired Airbus captain can hop into this because they just kind of fly with, buttons and stuff. Anybody can do it. And my advice really is to consider it a reasonable step and then just do it. Whether they fly with Victory flight training or they fly with APS out in Phoenix if they're doing UPRT, or a local outfit that's training in a T-34 or a T-6, get into some kind of an advanced aircraft. You could be a 6,000 hour bonanza person, and if you haven't stretched yourself, you might be flying as well as you did when you were 600 hours,
right,
or 60 hours in the bonanza. So you gotta stretch yourself as a human in anything we do, and that certainly applies to aviation.
I love that. The attainability factor of it is really encouraging, and it takes away that level of intimidation that we keep talking about as that theme.
Yeah, and we're not the only operation. We have ability to fly people all over the country. Sun and Fun Oshkosh, based in Texas. We got a jet that we have access to in Minnesota. That's part of Victory flight training. We go all over the place. But there are quality instructors, quality operations with great airplanes all over the country. So I just advise people to get out there and get some advanced training.
Switching gears a little bit to ForeFlight.
Yeah, sure.
and how much you all use it. We've talked about the configuration of, of the iPad and the Sentry device in the cockpit, your limited real estate. Where do you see this evolving? Do you imagine using ForeFlight continually through future programs or future training? I mean, is this something that you all see as a staple at Victory?
For the company and for me personally, absolutely. And I'll tell you about my own evolution as just a snapshot. When I left the reserves flying Hornets, there was a period where I was focusing on a startup company where I didn't fly very much. My dad had a Baron, which was amazing. He had Foreflight, so I kind of got introduced to it. And this is the 2009 to 2015, 16 time frame.
Yeah, early adoption.
Yeah, Foreflight was really just getting out there. And so my dad had it. I looked at it. I went, well, that's kind of cool. But then I didn't really start flying with it until 2016 when we got the T6. And on the T6, it had the World War II cockpit. So I took a RAM mount and got a full-size iPad, and it was like the F-18 where I had a nice moving map right there, and it was a whoopee for me. It was my blankie. It kind of gave me some kind of connection. And so I went from stopping flying F-18s with all the whiz-bang stuff, and when I say whiz-bang, those jets were old, and the technology was, ForeFlight is better than what was in the F-18s that I quit flying. So when I started using ForeFlight in the T6, it was amazing. And I will say that given the experience that I've had and millions of other people have had with ForeFlight, we've been flying for 122 years. ForeFlight, Siri told me it was founded in 2007. So in less than 20 years, ForeFlight, in my opinion, ForeFlight in less than 20 years has created more value for aviation in terms of efficiency, safety, situational awareness, making the right decisions, reference material. Everything you need is right here. Millions of pages of manuals. It's done more for aviation in less than 20 years than any other agency, company, individual since the Wright brothers. And I will stand by that statement. I think ForeFlight is so outstanding, and we see it every day in this and flying with different aviator clients. Pretty much everybody's using it. There are a couple other softwares that are out there that may be great. I haven't seen any reason to go elsewhere. I'm using ForeFlight Performance now in a Phenom 300, and being able to go in there, like the quick reference handbook you carry in the Phenom, the hard manual, it's got all kinds of data, but it's got nothing for wet runway. So if you got a wet runway, I go to my ForeFlight, I go click, dry, now wet, and it gives me proper data for the V-speeds and all that kind of stuff. So what ForeFlight has done from every level of aviation, professional aviators and airliners, military folks flying it, throughout the entire spectrum, you can tell that I love your product, and I'm so overjoyed.
You heard it here first, folks.
Yeah, I think it has been outstanding, and it will continue. You talked about evolution. It'll continue to be outstanding because you're a company that wants to stay at the edge and continue to innovate. And so I have no idea what ForeFlight's got going, but just the depth of the software and the performance and adding aircraft with all those different characteristics and the three-dimensional and synthetic vision, all these other things that are out there. I probably understand about 5% of what ForeFlight can really do for me, and I'm trying to add more awareness of the capability of software every day. But I love it, and we're going to keep using it for sure in the aircraft. One more thing, the panel mounts, like Guardian Avionics makes the great big panel mount. We have a big militarized crop duster aircraft, and that was we did the cockpit. We put a GTN 650 in there, but instead of putting a bunch of other G3Xs and things, we went with a maximum, the biggest iPad you can get.
I love it.
So you can have ForeFlight on an enormous iPad right there on this great big panel as the centerpiece, because it's got that capability.
I love
so there
it.
you go.
Well,
I hope I wasn't too effusive. It was just,
yeah,
I love the product.
and it makes us happy because it is an app made by pilots, for pilots, and they take feedback very seriously. We take feedback on what new features would make someone's life easier and safer.
Right.
And I think that we really relate to your values at Victory of the highest performing instructors. We try to take the highest performing pilots and get feedback from them. No matter what stage of training or flying that you're at, no matter what aircraft you fly or rotorcraft, we really try to emphasize safety and consistency and high performance, like you said. So that makes us happy to hear that.
Good.
We're always content when customers come up to us at events like this and are just raving about it. But also, we want the feedback, and that's how you grow and that's how you evolve. Is you take the good with the bad, and you make a good app out of it.
Exactly right.
Can you share a specific memorable moment, maybe a specific flight where something really captured the thrill or the challenge or even the humor of flying one of these S-211s? I mean, it's a beast of an aircraft. It's a great bird. So can you give a story, a testimonial, a specific moment?
I have one story that will wrap all those in. And for me, it has humor as well. But it was our first year at Oshkosh. It was just me at that time. And as an aside, I should have mentioned this earlier, I've achieved what every startup wants to achieve in that I've now brought in people that are far more qualified than me to do the flying. But back then, it was just me flew like 20 flights, 20 clients in 5 or 6 days at Oshkosh, which as a pilot was phenomenal. One of them stands out in particular. It was the gentleman was a fairly high time pilot. I think he had 6,000 hours at that time. Had flown Bonanzas and got into single engine turboprops. Then I think he had a King Air. Then he was flying a Citation. But throughout all this, like we mentioned earlier, if you only keep it within a 30 or 45 degree angle of bank turn and a G.5 or something like that, it's going to limit your ability to respond to dynamic, unconventional situations. And so I gave him a upset prevention type scenario. And he kind of goofed up the recovery. I hadn't probably coached him exactly properly. We ended up nose low, accelerating. I took the airplane. We were going through 300 and 350 knots, and we had just all Wisconsin farmland because it was out of Oshkosh. Took the airplane, throttle back, speed brake, brought it back up. No big deal. Mm-hmm. Did a couple more maneuvers, came back, landed, and big smile on his face. He was kind of, you could tell he was buzzing because it was a great new experience.
The adrenaline.
Yeah, but I just thought I thought it was a victory in that guy had gotten some great unconventional training that he could apply. I knew he could, and I was hoping to see him again for a checkout training. Well, then we're in there's a Warbird RV parking campground at Oshkosh where people kind of get together, have parties, whatever. I had somebody come up to me later that evening as we're just all hanging out, and this guy says, I just met the guy that you flew with today. He was telling this story about flying the S-211 with an instructor and how all of a sudden, all he's doing is looking at farmland, going super fast, and he thought he was going to die, and then the instructor took the jet, and then the guy telling the story says, that guy saved my life. and he says, and his name was Chris, and I just started laughing because I knew exactly what he was talking about. And for somebody, not just me, not just military pilots, but somebody that's been in an upset situation and understands that it's completely recoverable if you do the right procedures at the right times. For me, that thing was no big deal. This guy thought he was gonna die because he had never seen the situation before. So what it showed me at the very beginning of our program, it showed me that the training that we provide to a general aviation pilot, even a high-time general aviation pilot in a high-performance aircraft, right, the training that we provide literally can save lives. And in that case, his life hadn't been saved, but if he goes off and gets an approach turn stall or something in a citation, then he now knows how to handle that. And it could save him and everybody in his aircraft and people on the ground. And so I love that story because it is funny. I just imagined this guy going, Chris saved my life. But I didn't. But now he will be able to for the future.
It really puts into perspective how something routine for you or any of your other instructors might be totally life-changing and a total thrill, and changes the way that you look at flying later on for someone that's never experienced that.
For us, like, we could take you out and within 3 or 4 sorties, you would have the stick and rudder skills to be able to apply that in any airplane.
Right.
The procedures are the same.
Functionality is transferable, always.
Cessna 172, Phenom 300, you name it. You use the same procedures to get out of a dangerous situation.
Before a student starts at Victory, how do you prepare them before they even show up for their first briefing and their first lesson? Do you give them materials? Do they get anything to take home with them after their first lesson? Because I feel like in normal training, that's usually expected.
Sure. Yeah, all of the above. When somebody first shows interest, and wanting to talk about scheduling and next steps and that kind of thing, I'll send them a link to an online folder where we keep our training materials. So they'll get this, our Victory flight training, where it shows the Victory mindset, which is vision, accountability, and normalizing excellence. And that's what we drive home with everything we do. And then again, that's one of those pilot things you can apply everywhere. So they'll get this is just our checklist. So it's from the OEM checklist, which we also carry, FAA. But we have all the reference material for takeoff performance and engine data and that kind of thing, risk management, briefing material. And so this is our more concise flight checklist. So I'll send them that if they're going to do a familiarization flight, just to look at it so they know that they can use it, they can back us up. But again, on the first flight, I want them just looking out and soaking everything in and having a great time.
Right.
If they're taking the next step, rear seat transition to the front cockpit, then I'll send them this is our flight pack, we call it. We also have a smart pack, which, because in the military, you put a smart pack together for any mission where it's got all the data you're going to need, frequencies and target folders and that kind of thing. But our smart pack in this case is 60 some odd pages long. It's in this same kind of format, but you can keep it in your flight suit pocket and have it readily accessible. But it's got all the background and reference material, longer checklists, basically everything that we have found to be of value with all the S-211 publications for the last 7 years. We've put it into a format of a kneeboard size card and put it into that smart pack. And that's the next step, and it gives them something they can go through and again learn more about the aircraft. They'll also get a link to the full S-211 flight manual, Singapore version and a Filipino version, because Philippines is still flying the aircraft. And then the performance charts, which is kind of geeking out, but you'll do that if you have to go to if you want to go to the checkout. So we'll give all those reference materials kind of incrementally. We don't want to just give them everything. We have photos of both jets in the cockpit, so somebody can study, well, I'm going to fly this airplane, so this is kind of where the switch positions are.
That's really helpful.
Because especially the Garminized aircraft differs from the OEM manual. And with this one, they can see the iPad up there and understand that. And that'll be all before they show up. When they get there, again, depending on their first flight, we're focused on the mission, the rear cockpit safety, and the materials we focus on are probably just using the smart pack, the flight pack, and then the briefing items in the smart pack. But then after that, they go through the whole thing. If they get a checkout, they'll have our full flight pack on a knee board, however they want to use it. Some folks just want to use their mini iPad. and have the checklist there, which is great too. So we'll make all those available and more. We can provide other background information. It depends on how much somebody wants to dig in. If they do the PIC ride, the examiner will spend 3 or 4 hours with the oral. Yeah, so they need to know that flight manual. They need to know our emergency procedures. They need to know the smart pack and all that standard kind of check ride stuff. So that's what they'll really have to dig in.
Yeah, that's awesome. So we've talked a lot about the students.
Yep.
I want to shift back to the instructors. You all have an awesome job, but it's also very difficult. What does your currency look like? How often are you flying these things, and do you have to fly them a certain amount for, I guess, insurance purposes? I mean, what does the time look like for you all sitting in the cockpit versus front seat or back seat?
We go with standard FAA requirements for currency for the aircraft. For instructional currency, typically it's a 30-day period for us. If you haven't flown in 30 days, you need to fly and in order to go out and instruct. And that's waiverable, of course, because some of these guys have so much flight time, the situation, good weather, that kind of thing. So we always add the reasonable person theory to all that. So the currency can be challenging depending on aircraft status and clients, because it is it's not a steady flow with a certain number of flyers every month. So it ebbs and flows. Just summer season kind of kicking off right now, and then through Oshkosh, it definitely amps up. It's a free market mindset as a business with our instructors too. The instructors are all part-time. They're out there creating uncommon value in their own jobs. Like Scott Perdue from Flywire, we talked about, he's out there with a YouTube channel teaching people about safety in aircraft. We've got airline captains, we've got business jet captains, we got air show pilots, we got all the skills that these people have. Test pilots, they're out there doing great work, and they come part-time to contribute their skill set to Victory. And so it's incumbent upon them also as independent. They're not only pilots for us, but they're independent marketing engines for Victory. So they're out there beating the bushes, talking to people, going to shows, going on Instagram and doing all that social media stuff that is new for a lot of us. And they're building their book of business, kind of. You can look at it as an account manager. So each pilot, each of our instructors is able to fly as much as they want, as much as they're able, if they're bringing the business in. If it's coming in through our standard funnel, our standard pipelines, me talking to folks, then I just do my best to keep each one of those instructors current.
The diverse backgrounds obviously brings a lot of uncommon value to you all.
And the other cool thing is we have all the instructors' bios on our website, so people can go in there and go, oh, yeah, I got a commonality with this person or whatever.
Right.
And if able, we'll schedule them with that individual, as
that
they can see the
also
bios.
helps that intimidation level, because if you know who you're about to entrust with the lesson, it helps out for sure. So
yeah, and we got a good age background. We go from millennials to the old dogs, and kind of everything in between, so people can pick out who they want to fly with.
This is an incredible experience. I'm so grateful I got to fly one of these birds and hear about what you all do, because it's important to us to see our product being used in real time and get feedback. But it also just encourages, listeners and viewers of this to not be intimidated, to maybe take that baby step. Like you said, it's not a jump, it's a step to fly a jet or with either you all or any other operation, and try to fulfill a lifelong dream and get exposed to something like this. So I can't thank you enough for being on the show. We're so happy we did this, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your week.
Thank you for having us. It was a great time. Great to spend the time out here with you guys. Amelia, thank you.